Welcome to Branding Brews. This is your host, Ryan Wheaton. Branding Brews is a podcast bringing you insight on branding, design, and marketing for the beer industry. Today joining us, we have Nick Longo from Longo Designs, and he's also a podcast co-host superstar for the Deeply Graphic Design Cast, which just happens to be one of my favorite podcasts on design out there. So I'm stoked to have you on.
Thanks, man. You have a really good radio voice, by the way.
Thanks. I try not to fake it too much, but I I'm sure because I'm sitting in front of a microphone, I probably do a little bit.
I think we all do in a way. And I notice I think the first time I remember hearing myself recorded, I laughed because I was like, oh man, I sound like a TV announcer. That's not me.
Yeah. Once you listen,
so it's right.
Yeah, you listen back. Totally. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, man, I think I've noticed that are you vegan or vegetarian?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So am I. So that was kind of funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And craft brews and design, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had another brother.
I was gonna say brothers from another mother. Yeah, exactly. Nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So, cool, man. So yeah, thanks again for joining. So yeah, for today, I was kind of wanting to talk about. You had posted this really cool thing on Instagram that was kind of like a content planning outline kind of mock-up to kind of help businesses, or like in this case, we're talking about like breweries, with planning content that would go onto some packaging or like labels and stuff like that. So
sure.
Why don't you just give us like a little rundown of like what that was and like how you used it?
Yeah. I think it came out of just being in knee deep into a brewery and some can designs for this local brewery that we're setting up here locally. I've tried to, I think with every project I've been trying to find a way to streamline the process a little bit more, not just for myself, but really for the client to be, so we have agreeable, accountable checkpoints throughout the project. And I was realizing that when I was starting this project, I was like, I want to make sure that they are 100% into the design with me, but also if we take these steps to kind of show them and map out, very similar to like a blueprint to a home, what the elements and the components need to be before we even get into the design process, right? So it's about having a list of everything, and it may be even its location, and showing that and sharing it with the client to a point where we have great conversations while we either Skype or meet live and plan out this strategy. And what I've been finding is it's not only a great thing to be more accountable, but I think in the end, the design really wins with this kind of process. And again, like I said earlier, it's just a matter of you learn from the last one, right? Like you go, maybe we weren't too in sync and I should have been a little bit more upfront with let's talk about content and brewer, everything that we're going to include on here. This was really a result of just, a few projects that really kind of went haywire, and I wanted to find a way to streamline it.
Yeah, totally. That's, from both perspectives too. Talk about it from like a designer's or an agency standpoint. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to translate to a business or like to a brewery, what kind of content they need up front to get the project going. And then also from like a brewery's perspective or from a business perspective, you don't always know what you need when it comes to putting together like a package or a label. So I'll definitely be posting your little outline mock-up thing you put on the show notes so people can take a visual look at that.
Cool. And I'll give you actually the PDF, that you can kind of show front and back, because it really breaks down what you see from the front view and what you see from the side view, for the back view. And again, too, like one of the neatest things that came out of it was exactly what you said. The client sometimes, we have to walk them through these processes. They've never, this guy, the team I'm working with is brand new. This is their first brewery. And it was a way of showing them that, hey, when we get to that part of design, you're going to see a few things in there that we've already kind of talked a little bit about. So when they see it there, it's not this full surprise of like, whoa, what is that? That seems like a disconnect. Whereas we've talked about it through the process, and now they see it and they feel a bit more involved, maybe even want to take the credit,
Yeah.
At some point. So it's just been a really good benefit right now, and it's now that we're in our first stages of the first 9 labels and all of the full layouts, we are at a such better point right now because we spent a good week on just color blocks. Like literally, it's just almost like a Tetris looking
Yeah.
idea where it's just color blocks of like, this is where the logo is going to go, this is where the brand name, this is where the beer name is going to go, this is where the graphics going to go, this is where the tasting notes are going to go. So it's really just fine tuning that before we even start doing anything specific with design.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a similar situation. I'm working with some startup breweries and doing labels, and you kind of from a design point of view, trying to translate, because these people starting up a new business or breweries don't always have it in mind of like to plan out things, you know.
Yep, exactly.
So it's a great visual way, and if you design too much, then it could be distracting because they're starting to look at actual designs, and then they're getting distracted from the content. So I think doing just the color blocks, it kind of really help kind of map it out.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to tell you too, like you said, the design wins because you already have an idea of what should be there. But for a designer, for an agency, the more you can do upfront, I think also too, the better your process and the better the quality of your work look at the very beginning. So if you are putting out those invoices or those estimates for these jobs, when you show that you take the time to go through this, I don't think a lot of designers are really kind of doing that right now. And when you lay this out to them at the beginning, you seem more trusted, and it's just something that we're thinking about before we're even, agreed upon something. So it really helps in that matter as well.
Yeah, it keeps things professional, keep things well organized, keeps things moving smoothly, and
as good as you can.
Yeah, things always. Yeah, you think you can plan things out.
It's not foolproof.
No, that never is. Yeah, so I mean, on that kind of idea, do you have any advice, say for a new brewery or a new business getting going? That's gonna have like a package or like a label done that doesn't have a outline or doesn't have anything set in place yet. Do you have any advice for that situation?
I would say for the owner, for the particular brewer in mind, it's good to know what's gonna make you different as a brewery from the very beginning. I've realized too that a lot of times what a brewery client will bring up a lot is other breweries, because they're comparing so many different things, and they have good intentions. They want to make something great. You wouldn't be doing this unless you were passionate about it and love to make beer, and now you want to turn it into a brand. But I think if you could give them the best advice from the very beginning is, let's make something 100% original. Let's make something 100% unique. Let's not look at the other brands, and after we go through maybe a little bit of inspiration, turn that off and really concentrate on what's going to make you different and stand out. I think that's that one thing that's a little tough for them to kind of figure out. And that's where you got to walk them through, I think, the process of developing a story, developing the right name. Is there a spin? Is there something very unique about yours that will get beer people talking? I think, you think about yourself as a beer connoisseur, right? And what are the things you tell friends about something you've tried? And it's sometimes beyond just the taste and the what you loved about the beer. It's really something about the brand. Did it spark a little, something kind of imagination or something unique about it? Did it have a very cool, unique spin on something? Was it very clever in its voice? I think that's the one thing in branding. Obviously, we want a brand to have a voice, but man, for breweries, that is key. You have to have some kind of I always say, like, if your brand was a person, how would it talk?
Yeah.
Like, would it be funny? Would it be scientific? Would it be you name it? There's so many different characteristics you can pull up, but these are those little things to plug and play and say, let's do this before we even name it, before we even come up with that story and particularly that brand positioning statement. I think that's one thing I've been really pushing out front, is the first meeting after an agreement is to agree upon what's that brand positioning statement. What's your differentiation?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and working with a brewery on their branding, you definitely could do a lot of exploration, and a lot of times the brewery, the owners and stuff will definitely learn a lot of things in the process. And like you said, like kind of, I think it's good. Like you take notes, and just explore every little avenue, of like your brand values, and just explore every little thing. Just take a bunch of notes, and sometimes that can result in coming up with like values that you want to live by for your brand, and then also even just jotting down like little words that you can think of that remind like of the beer you're drinking, that that you brewed. Because when it comes to like a label or a package, then you have to, you'll probably want to have some interesting content on there, like taglines, and especially about each beer as well. You're gonna have to like plug in some information on the label that's going to describe that beer, what it tastes like, different experiences, and obviously you'll probably want to have a little bit about your brand on there as well. So
definitely. And it's a good time if you're a designer that partners with a copywriter. There's no better project to work on together to really help the brand sing a little bit more on the packaging than bringing in someone who can help you with the copy. And that's another thing to add to your capabilities if you're a designer going out there, or an agency looking to do some craft brewery business. Use that as a selling point, that you have the copywriter on hand to kind of, enhance and write that story beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, from a designer's view, if you can team up with a copywriter, that's huge. And I guess not everyone has the luxury of being able to get that within their budget, but that could definitely help for sure.
Yeah, there's ways to do it. I think on LinkedIn and through other avenues, if there's someone in your network that and hey, there's a lot of young copywriters that are struggling just the same way we are as designers, so
yeah.
Getting I think too, for me at least, getting into the craft beer business as well, it's kind of a pinch me thing, and I think for a lot of people, they might love the opportunity to be involved in that. It's a great case study to show in any kind of creative situation, regardless of how you touch a project like this.
Yeah. Have you checked out that Kodo design craft beer design book they put together?
Definitely, that was key, man. I think that was kudos to them for putting something so that was like the rule book, really.
Yeah. I'd say for it was kind of written towards, I'd say, both like brewery owners and designers. It's a good tool.
Right in between. It's written in a way where whoever you are, it really talks to you and explains more about the emphasis of the importance of how you build this brand and what to look for, both sides, really.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. But I mean, if you're a brewery out there and you don't have a strong brand story or brand values or that kind of setup, that's a really good resource just to get started before you work with a designer, because gives you a lot of kind of like practices, or kind of almost like worksheets of things you can do to kind of start mapping some things out and really start thinking about things.
Yeah, it is. I think Workbook is a perfect example of what it is. It's definitely helped me out to kind of get introduced into that area, and specifically put up a few red flags that I now have in the process to know when we get to that point where we're like submitting things, like, how long it's going to take to get the approvals on a lot of the labels and things like that. So it was great to know that really up front, and have that put into the process, into your timeline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm talking about content, content planning. That all can really like strengthen a brand. If you're focusing on the content, if you're planning ahead for it, given the time to work on that, it's only going to create better content, basically, which in result will provide a stronger brand and a stronger platform for that brand. Have you experienced this like with the clients you've worked with, as far as like this kind of content planning?
Yeah, and it's something that I'm really putting a spotlight on now more than ever, because it's one of those things. I know content, we always say content is king, and designers want to believe design is, but like, yeah, I think I'm slowly turning into a content builder than a designer in a way, because that, man, if we could do both, if designers can be, very much brand developers and content developers, or at least you're the nucleus of the development. You could be using a lot of these other outside resources, like we were talking about, like you name it, a copywriter or a great illustrator to help, bring these things to life. If that's not in your wheelhouse, it's definitely, content is everything. And with the craft beer industry, I think more than anything, that is the thing that really sets you apart. I think it's really smart for us to start thinking that way and help a client walk them through this whole idea of the process. And I found it was funny. One of my client currently kept laughing every time I said, talking about the story, and he would say, "Oh, you and that story thing again," And I'm like, well, I kept that in the back of my mind. Then every time he would bring up a competitor, I would laugh, and I'm like, "Why do you like that competitor?" And he'd be like, "Because of the story." And then he'd be like, "Damn it." It was the story, and it was like, or it was the way they phrased their, the names they came up with, and this experience that they were really making with the beer. And I'm like, that's what I'm saying. It's almost like they know it too. It's just, you got to get the right communication to get them to understand that, yeah, story sounds great and blah, 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 but that's what we all love about other beers that we like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's so competitive right now in the beer market, and it's continuing to grow. So yeah, if you're opening a new brewery in XYZ city, you have to have some sort of story, something behind your brand that's going to be somewhat intriguing. At least going to give you a level playing field as far as competition, or hopefully a leg up.
And it's that's where the originality, I think, really comes in, because when we look at the ones that we like, typically they're very original and they really stand out because nothing else is really like it. And so to just be a copy of something, or to be too inspired by something that's already out there, you will only be a shadow. You're not going to be the real deal. So I think you got to trust that it's, specifically in this industry as well, almost anything goes, right? I mean, some of the most successful beers out there, I think if you first saw them, you probably would have never thought they would ever make it big. And yet, to our surprise, even some of the worst designed ones out there are some of the biggest ones, right? Because it's like, there's that whole, like, I always look at the Pliny label and we laugh and say, almost, I bet that was specifically made the way it is to stand out even more. And like, it's no accident that it doesn't really follow really great design, but it's standing out, and we're talking about it, and it's well received and sought after all over. So you got to almost think that way. There's this whole idea of, yes, there are rules. There are things that we've got to do because it is beer. But beyond that, what you can do to spin this and be totally different is really up to us. And I think that's where you can shine as a great partner to this brewery. And hopefully, you're doing, I love when I look at these case studies from other agencies and everything out there, that they continue on. You are the agency of record with this brewery for, throughout their existence. And I think that's what you want to build. You want to build enough trust and value that you are along for the long run with these guys as the designer or the design team.
Yeah. And for like a brewery out there, like, stories, like, the story can come from anywhere. I think, like, sometimes it could be a little daunting or overwhelming. Sometimes I think, like, oh, I don't, like, oh, brand story, like, I don't have any crazy unique, story. But for a case in point, like up here in Portland, there's this brewery called Gigantic Brewery. And they're like all illustrated, kind of like comic book character style. And they really kind of made a brand for themselves, because every beer label is done by different artists. It's all very comic looking illustrations and colorful, and no two labels are the same. And their brand story basically was that the two owners just loved comic books.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's not always that
Simple. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
yeah, I mean, it could
You
just
know.
be something you're interested in. Just try to make it unique, but just do some exploration and try to find something. Then once you get that, and then make sure you stick with it to keep that brand solid.
And that's a great one to bring up too. I love like one of my favorites out here in Anaheim. I'm sure you've seen Bottle Logic.
Yeah.
Brewing company, and I just had the chance to go out there. I think with a good another mutual friend of ours, Alex. He he's a big fan of Bottle Logic.
Yeah.
And so we went out there to their big opening of they were releasing one of their beers, and I love their story. It's just the fact that they're just nerds about beer. They're just that's kind of where that's their story. And then every year there's like a new theme applied to it. This year they used the whole arcade and video games and the retro vibe of the 80s. And so your story could be, I wouldn't say go too specific. If the bigger and broader it is, in a way that every year you can add a little more color to it and a little more texture, I think that's a way to maybe think about how to start the storyline when it comes to your beer and your brewery.
Yeah, those are definitely good points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So going talking again more about like label stuff and content for labels. So there could be a lot of repeating elements between labels. Sometimes you're creating a label system, so there's going to be duplicated content, or if it's not duplicated content, it's at least like similar content that's going to be in the same position on the label. Like alcohol content, like IBU. And then also like sometimes there's little like icons or little like different marks that they repeat from label to label to kind of create this system for the brand packaging. And so I see this content planning tool as like being something that could be pretty beneficial to doing that packaging system as well. Do you use it that way? I mean, create like modular systems at all?
For sure, because I think you have to keep in mind that the model you're building from the very beginning is going to be the template for everything down the road. Let's say that you want the everyday line of that brewery to be in the same template or the same fashion. And like you said, you change these little things per beer flavor or variety. So the more you know up front about how much space maybe you're providing for that piece, and the hierarchy of it. So like, let's say, for sure you want the beer variety to be a shining spot, and you want it to be easy to recognize when someone's just scanning, 6 cans in a row. That to me is what I know is going to sell it. They know what they want as a beer, so make sure that that's big enough. Then, based on planning and doing the strategy of the label and its content, what specifically is what's the next thing that should be there? Well, should it be maybe the characteristics? And then how do you do that? How are you inspired by it? Like, I think for me, it's been great because the one we're doing now, the name of the brewery is 14 Cannons, and it's all based on a very pirate theme, but in a very authentic way, not the Pirates of the Caribbean, this isn't no swashbuckling kind of adventure. We want it to be very authentic, as if like of the time period. Any of the materials we make look like they could have been right from the era, not what we'd expected to look like right now. So we're trying to, and it's been really fun because of the font choices and the backgrounds and the textures. But for me, planning ahead and not being so involved in the design at the very beginning, it's more about this layout and the structure and the balance of where everything's going to go. The brand gets so much stronger because we're not even talking about design at the very beginning. You're just looking at this modular system and getting agreements with everyone that we love the balance. Then you add your design and your texture and your everything about it and the story. And I'm finding that it falls into place so much easier when you're there. It just looks so much better in that first thing. And like I said earlier, the client's in on it. And so when that first draft is shown, they're just like, oh, all the pieces are into place. This is exactly what you promised. And that's all you want to hear.
Yeah, so a couple follow-up questions then based on what you're just saying. So did the brewery at all have any difficulty looking at this kind of more simplified outline and being able to visualize what content should go where. Because I know sometimes clients can look at something a bit more simple and not be able to see like a whole kind of picture from it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve with it. I think if you set them up with the expectation that you're going to be just seeing a very simple layout for the first thing, and this is a great thing to add while you're still in the branding stages, and we're still talking about final logo changes and color selections, and so they're still in the mood. They still know the brand's being built. Then you show them this and say, I'm thinking ahead. And now there's your advantage, right? You're obviously thinking ahead. That's a good thing. And they go, oh yeah, let's start thinking about that. And if you could do this live, obviously that is the best, right? Because you control the meeting and the environment. So I bring out the paperwork, we lay it on the table, and now it's like everyone gets up there from their chairs, right, and is involved in this document. And there's you don't have the chances are a lot less that someone's going to be like, I don't get this, because you've set up the expectation of what they're going to get, and you do it live. If you can't do it live, make sure you're sharing the document, you're showing it to them for the first time, and maybe you're doing it via Skype or through the internet in a way where you guys can really communicate with this. And trust me that, once they get through that, and even if it's a hesitation for a minute or two, they understand the benefit of this right away.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, from a design perspective, that's huge. I've done that as well, because showing the client the work beforehand, sometimes they don't read it the right way, and it brings up way more questions before than there should be, or like if it was presented, like if it's presented and explained, then that definitely it can help tremendously.
I'll tell you where it's another benefit too. I'm using it on a complete 180 degree salad dressing bottle that we are doing 12 varieties of. So it was interesting because a client came back after about 6 months of kind of put something on hold, couldn't pursue the project at the time, came back 6 months later. And when I reevaluated it, now that I'm using this unique kind of building block structure for your packaging from the very beginning, I put it out to him and saying, hey, we do things a lot differently now. Here's kind of an example of how we are really tuning into what you need and what has to be there for content first before we get into design. And he's on the other side of the country. We did not meet live on this, but when I showed it to him and he got it right away, his first response was, this is brilliant. Let's talk. And it reignited the project again. And, and our fees definitely have grown over the last 6 months. So again, there was no reluctancy to take on and the new estimate of the price that we had. And it really, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we were showing him how much more invested we are in this process for the better of the brand and the project.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And from a brewery's perspective, if you're looking out to hire a new designer, or you're looking for a designer to like start your brand, I mean, especially if you're going off the ground like with nothing, this is all kind of stuff you'd want to look at with a designer that you're looking to hire. You want to check out their process, how do they work, because this kind of stuff just shows how it could work really smoothly and really make things just better in the long run. So this will be a good helpful hint for both business owner and for designer out there. But I think anybody who's looking to hire a designer for their craft brewery has to look at the fact that obviously these people have whoever you're looking at, make sure they've got some packaging experience. Obviously, that's kind of number one priority. But I think also too to keep in mind is the bottle and the 360 kind of experience, making sure that they have some idea of how the brand wraps around a bottle or a can in that way, because that's where it gets a little tricky, So I would just say make sure that you've got someone that is looking to do that and that has that experience to understand how packaging works.
And also too, like for the designer, if you are really trying to get into this space and you don't have anything in the craft beer in your case studies or in your portfolio, really stress the fact that you understand these key attributes, because to be honest with you, these things all kind of do, help each other. If you know how to do a great shampoo bottle, can you do a craft beer thing? Yeah, I think you're on track for it, but show them that you totally get it. So if you're trying to make that shift into this world, make sure you're showing all of these key attributes that you know about packaging and branding, and particularly this idea of putting your content first could help, in the long run and make you land that project.
Yeah, yeah, and and as young designers, and I did this myself. When I was a little bit younger in my career, is just don't be afraid to do some self-initiated projects at all.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
just like you're mentioning, I think it's designing things that wrap around a dimensional object can be challenging. Like, there's when you work flat, on like a website or say a poster or brochure, there's an edge. It's flat. It stops somewhere. You have you have like a frame. But don't be afraid to initiate some of your own projects and like mock up your own like brewery and labels, because you'll really figure out how things can like wrap around and how they should interact. And
totally. And those mock-ups are great for that. I think there's a great value by putting the artwork on there, not just because it looks good and you can throw it up on Instagram, but they do have a great kind of ability to show if the design is working or not.
Yeah.
And you can't fine tune anything looking at it flat. You can fine tune it when you see it, applied to the can, and you get to. And there's some great we've been using this great software out there that takes the PDF and puts it right on there. And I know Adobe's just launched their new one as well. So there's a ton of new software to really help you, not just for you, but man, if you can show like a 3D PDF and send that off to a client and they can move it around and view it, man, you got them even better.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to check that out later. I know. Yeah, I've seen 3D like applications that you could like wrap the designs around.
Yes.
I usually work with mock-ups, and I've done some 3D work in just Photoshop manually.
Yes.
I've designed a bunch of tap handles, and it would all be from scratch and manually doing
cool.
3D. Yeah, which it's fun.
It's a lot of work, man.
So anything that can automate that process a little bit is huge.
My favorite is when you do all that work for like a 3/4 view, and the client's like, "Can I see it like just a tad bit more to the right?" And you're like, "Oh my God."
Dude, yeah. But dude, I did some work for a while for a tap handle manufacturer called the Allison Group, and I'm actually probably gonna talk with them on another episode.
Nice.
And yeah, they do a bunch of stuff, but yeah, if you're a 3D artist, it's kind of not a problem because you can just turn that 3D model around. But when you're doing things like scrappy and from scratch, I've had that problem a number of times, and they're like, well, could you just turn it a little bit more? And oh man, like no, I did that all by hand. Like I literally like painted every shadow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but what you're saying though, is like from a brewer's perspective, if you're working with a designer, make sure you do have that experience of looking at every angle, because that's super important. And I found that doing it the old school way of printing it out and wrapping it around the can, like
sure. It's scrappy, but it's exactly what you need to do to see if it works.
Yeah, I think it's funny these days and age. Like people are so used to just mocking things up on like the computer and 3D stuff. But I did that recently. I just forget how much I used to like print stuff out and it's printed out, slap it on a can and see what it looks like.
Oh, and bring those to a meeting, and there's nothing better than live and in person.
Yeah. And have you mocked stuff up on say like a retail shelf as well?
Yeah. So what we'll do too is kind of show it maybe in a planogram style, where we will take it and show it next to competitive brands to show, one, like, just does it stand out, and then two, does the series, does the grouping of all of the beers we're doing, do they work together as a campaign?
Like billboard effect.
Is there a do you see that by just the color, that's how you would identify the variety of the beer? So laying them out on planograms, we will even, get as specific as taking pictures of specific, retailers, or the idea of where it might be merchandised, and show it that way.
Yeah.
These are the tools, man. We've got them. I think the more you can show that it's going to work, they feel a lot better, through the process, that there's a lot of reassurance.
Yeah, I love having good phones on a camera.
Yeah.
Well, I said that totally backwards. Good cameras on phones. It's like funny. I'll just be like walking down an aisle and be like, "Ooh, this is a pretty sweet little setup here, like planogram, or retail shelf," and just totally nerd out and just take a picture of it and look like total weirdo.
Hey, everyone's doing it, man. You're not the only one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Yeah. So tell us more about this brewery you're working with now. Is this kind of one of the first big brewery branding projects you've been doing, or?
Yeah, for sure. It came through. We've been doing a lot of restaurant has become kind of our new thing that I really want to just concentrate on. I love the idea of being in food, beverage, and restaurant. To me, that's just like we were talking earlier. I love food, love beer, just love this idea of being able to communicate it well. And we got this through one of the architects we had worked with on a previous client, knew of this brewery. And so they're a local team. They have built breweries. They're basically a general contracting company.
Nice.
And they've decided to build one on their own. And it will be a brewery / showroom. So it will highlight tons of features and tons of equipment from all different, manufacturers. And it will be a showroom where they can go and show off, all of the equipment. So these brands can actually send people there to say, you want to see our, you name it, in action, you can go to 14 Cannons and check it out. So it's going to be kind of a unique spin in that way. But one of the best assets is that this team understands the experience and they know how to build. So we are just having the best time kind of coming up with the experience now. And I got to admit, this is like the most deep we've ever got into taking a brand and turning it not just into something that speaks and sells, but is an experience. And when you walk in, everything from the first thing that greets you at the beginning and how it walks you through and tells a story, and some of the ideas that we're coming up with for the murals and the interaction of when you're in there. It's just a complete blast.
Oh man, that sounds great.
Yeah. So we're having a ball with that, and it's definitely being there's a few good spins on it based on the connections and the people that the owners know. So there's a lot of great events coming up, for the grand opening, and so I just couldn't be happier. And like I said earlier, every once in a while you got to be when you get into a job and you're so in the weeds, you got to pinch yourself and say, I'm doing exactly what I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
I'm in this thing. I better take advantage of it as much as I can creatively.
Yeah. It's pretty wild for sure. Yeah. Dude, that reminds me, on the craftbrewcreative.com, I came across this guy. I think his name was Chris Ladwig, if I didn't get that wrong. But he did 500 beer labels. They were all unique, and what they were invitations for a brewery brand opening.
Wow.
So yeah, it was wild, man. Like they were opening up their doors, and they're like, how can we do this special invitation to the people that like in their community that like helped them and get them off the ground. And so they created a unique beer label for each person, had their name on it, and 500 beer labels, all different, as invitations. It was really, really, really cool.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
I'm assuming hand done and like put applied like one. These were one off, right? Like it was just like per invitation.
Yeah. No, they were all they're all one off. So they're probably just printed on like a self adhesive roll or
yep.
I'm sorry. At first I thought you meant like maybe he did them all by hand, like with a pencil and pen or something.
Yeah,
or
no,
ink or something. Oh, that's I chuckled. I'm like, oh god, that'd be terrible.
Well, thanks for putting that out there, because now my client's going to hear this.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Yeah. I'm never talking to you again. Sorry.
You're going to have to come on down and help me with those 500 labels.
Well, hey, I guess if there's a little
hey,
money
if there's some beer involved. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, or beer.
There you go.
I'll work for beer.
We'll work for beer.
I've done it before. I'll do it again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So, well, I think like it kind of just as like a wrap up. I mean, talking about content. It's never too early to start thinking about content, whether you're a designer or you're a brewery.
Yeah.
Just start planning things out. Like, we mentioned earlier, just start taking notes, start writing things out. Like, try to come up with some unique selling points, some kind of unique things about who you are, about who you are as a brewery or as a brewer or as an owner. And then also about the beers that you're planning on launching too, and because each beer is going to have to need to have content on the label. So just start thinking that ahead of time, and I mean it's just going to set you up for more success. It'll build a stronger brand, and I really think that content planning idea you had was pretty great. And
oh, that's great. Thanks for saying that, man.
Yeah,
yeah. So, it's the planning ahead, man. This is more than any other project. I think you really, because of the timelines, because of the 90-day turnarounds when you send off things to TDP, it's like these are those things you can't work around. So the more you could do up front, the more you can get in advance, the better your timeline, and then it shows off your value tremendously if you're the designer that you're thinking this way.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Well,
cool.
Yeah. Well, man, I again appreciate your time. It's been fun chatting with you.
You as well, man. I'm glad we finally met up. This is great.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny to play tag on the social media and stuff, but it's great to actually sit down and chat.
Yeah, leave it to podcasts and beers. So you've picked a great topic.
Yeah, I'm hoping
to start it off.
I'm hoping that's the case. Like, hey, beer, podcast, design. I mean, that's the things I like to nerd out on. So hopefully that's for other people as well.
There you go. Yeah. Perfect job, man.
Cool. Thanks. So where can people find you online?
We're at website is longodesigns.com, and everything's basically through there. I think Twitter and Instagram are kind of my two favorite kind of spots outside. It's Longo Designs on Instagram and Longo Designs Inc. on Twitter.
That's awesome. So yeah, check him out, man. Like, he's got some good stuff online. He's got some really great branding stuff and some great labels and packaging. Thanks, yeah. Thanks again for joining.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Thanks so much.